Welcome back to The Explainer. Look, if you've ever tried to read a 50-page bureaucratic EU grant document, you know it's, well, not exactly a beach read. So today, we're completely cutting through the noise to give you the actionable insights. We're looking at the Erasmus Plus 2026 call for proposals, specifically focusing on how the European Union is actually funding the future of digital education. Whether you're an educator, a policymaker, or a grant writer, think of this explainer as your direct guide to some massive opportunities on the horizon.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our clear table of contents for breaking down these huge funding opportunities. First, decoding the 2026 call itself. Second, navigating digital education content. Third, partnering for ethical AI. Fourth, AI pathways for basic skills. And finally, how all this shapes Europe's educational future.
Let's jump right into Section 1, decoding the Erasmus Plus 2026 call and its policy experimentations.
Now, before we get into the really specific funding topics, we need to establish the human stakes here. Because at the end of the day, these grants are about people. The EU is using this 2026 call as a powerful catalyst to build education systems that are resilient, inclusive, and adaptable to a crazy fast-changing world. They're funding what they call European policy experimentations. And these aren't just theoretical thought experiments. We're talking about transnational cooperation projects, actually developing, implementing, and actively testing new educational activities across different countries. It's all about building testing grounds and blueprints that can literally be scaled up to support real evidence-based policy at the European level.
Moving right along to Section 2, navigating digital education content.
So we are currently facing a very real modern crisis in our classrooms right now, and that is content overload. The digital transition has caused this exponential explosion in the production of digital education content, or DEC. I mean, we're talking endless e-textbooks, 3D simulations, interactive maps, quizzes, mobile apps, the whole shebang. And look, while this abundance can absolutely boost innovation, it also creates a massive headache for educators. Teachers and school leaders are just overwhelmed by the sheer volume of choices out there, which makes it incredibly difficult to figure out what actually works best for their specific pedagogical goals.
To help solve this, the EU is actually offering targeted funding. The goal here? Creating collaborative support mechanisms. They aren't just going to hand teachers more content. They want to fund the training educators need to confidently evaluate what's already out there. They're looking for projects that apply existing EU quality criteria for digital content in real, everyday contexts. And even better, the EU wants to fund the co-creation of content. Imagine bringing teachers, developers, and educational authorities together right at the beginning of the process. It's a real game changer.
Which brings us to Section 3, partnering for ethical AI.
Okay, we definitely can't talk about digital education without addressing the elephant in the room, artificial intelligence. Right now, there's a growing perception that current AI tools are basically built by a limited number of big tech providers from outside the EU, often operating as a black box with very little input from actual educators and learners. And that obviously raises huge concerns about privacy, transparency, and data protection. So the crucial point is this: the EU wants to shift away from that. Their funding priority is what they call EU values-driven AI. They want to fund systems that are ethical, human-focused, age-appropriate, explainable, and absolutely compliant with the regulatory framework of the new AI Act.
Now, to actually achieve this ethical AI ecosystem, the grant requires applicants to use a very specific collaborative model: public-private partnerships, or PPPs. Let's define that real quick. PPPs are structured collaborations between public authorities, like schools and local governments, and private sector organizations. The grant document makes it crystal clear that you need the complementary expertise of both sectors to design these innovative, ethical digital learning environments. Think about it. You can't just have tech companies building in isolation, and you can't have schools building tech without expert developers. They need each other. So what does this actually look like in practice? Well, this collaborative model translates into 3 mandatory deliverables for grant applicants. Step 1, you literally have to build a ready-to-use framework for public-private partnerships in AI, offering clear governance models and agreement templates. Step 2, you need a stakeholder engagement toolkit. This is to ensure teachers and developers are actually working together from the very earliest stages. And Step 3, you must pilot validated use cases. They want to see clear, real-world evidence of ethical AI use in education, not just theory.
Let's move to Section 4, AI pathways for basic skills.
Now, what's really interesting about this next topic is that it tackles a genuinely alarming challenge: a sharp decline in foundational skills across Europe. The 2022 PISA results show a pretty stark reality.
30% of 15-year-olds in Europe have serious challenges understanding and applying basic mathematics in real life, and 25% struggle with basic reading and science. That is huge. Without these foundational skills, these kids are going to struggle to participate fully in society and the future labor market. And this is exactly why this specific funding is so desperately needed right now.
So the EU-funded solution to this skills crisis is the development of personalized learning pathways, or PLPs. A PLP essentially uses advances in technology, specifically AI, to completely tailor the learning journey to the individual. Instead of the traditional one-size-fits-all classroom approach, these AI-powered PLPs can provide targeted, immediate support to close a student's individual knowledge gaps. They adjust dynamically to a learner's pace and style, which really helps spark curiosity and allows students to advance much more quickly once they actually grasp those basic concepts.
For those of you listening who are actually applying, here is your quick checklist for this topic. Your project has to create an evidence-based framework for these AI-powered PLPs. You've got to implement validated, multi-country pilots that show measurable progress in basic skills. You also need to create practical, everyday toolkits for educators, and finally, deliver actionable policy recommendations back to the EU. But, and this is absolutely crucial, remember the document's most vital rule. These AI tools are meant to enhance, never replace the teacher's absolutely critical role in the classroom.
Finally, Section 5, Shaping Europe's Educational Future.
Let's zoom out for a second and contextualize the broader opportunity sitting right in front of us. The grant text explicitly calls to safeguard Europe's digital sovereignty and promote trustworthy, explainable, and transparent AI systems developed within the EU. This really emphasizes the massive scale of what the EU is trying to accomplish here. We aren't just talking about local, isolated projects. This is about deep, cross-border collaboration to secure Europe's educational independence. The EU is heavily investing to ensure that the future of learning isn't just technologically advanced, but is firmly grounded in transparency, trust, and fundamental human values.
Which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question to consider. Will your institution step up and help write the ethical blueprint for AI in European classrooms? The funding is definitely there. The mandate is incredibly clear, and honestly, the need has never been more urgent. Whether you're aiming to solve digital content overload, pioneer new public-private AI partnerships, or close that alarming basic skills gap, the Erasmus Plus 26 call is your launchpad. Thank you so much for joining me on The Explainer today, and I really hope this actionable roadmap inspires your next big educational project.